Now, we've got the presidential inauguration around the corner in January. And just like here in the UK, the issues around the economy, the finance, how much money people feel they have in their pocket is pressing down heavily, isn't it, on the minds of the American people. Antjuan, if I can start with you, what is Trump going to do better than Biden did, which I realize for you as a Democrat might be a difficult question.
Well, thank you for having me. Look, I don't know if the president-elect is going to be able to do anything right away when it comes to the economic bill of health of everyday Americans, other than restructure the tax code in which he did during his last presidency, that ultimately most economists agreed benefited the wealthy and the well-connected. I do think the former president will benefit handsomely from a Biden macro economy where we were still recovering from a once in a century global pandemic, and the American economy rebounds stronger than ever than any other organized country in the world. Where I think Democrats made a mistake in the 2024 election cycle is not speaking to the micro aspects of the economy, but focus more on the macro. And the macro, while on paper most people would agree that has done well and is doing well, the micro, my personal bill of health, my personal economy, is not so good in the eyes of many. And I think that was the disconnect when it comes to the economic election.
I think in terms of the macro picture, though, Noelle, people don't really care unless the micro picture feels better for them.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, you've got to look. Republicans, people that wanted Donald Trump, voted overwhelmingly. I mean, it was a red wave that Republicans feel was a long time coming. And you can base that win on the economy. People felt like they were going to the grocery store and paying so much for bare necessities, which are eggs, bread, milk. This is a staple for Americans, for the American table. And people felt like things were out of control. Buying a house in America was unbelievable. Quite frankly, a lot of people were going to Europe buying homes, because the prices were better there. You couldn't get a home here, interest rate through the roof. And then we had the problem at the border, which is the root of a lot of this, are the border, the open border policies with people coming in, the fentanyl. I think Americans showed you at the voting poll, they were sick and tired of it.
This is so interesting for me as a Brit because I can't remember another time in history when every country around the world, it seems, is dealing with exactly the same problems. It's almost like something has occurred in lockstep across the world. And admittedly, you can't neglect the role that the so-called pandemic kind of played in all of that. But we have to move on. We have to, as every country has to now move on. And so, Donald Trump would say, look, I'm going to deport a load of people. And he does make it sound easy, not so easy as we also know here in the UK. I'm going to put tariffs on goods, particularly from China, Mexico, Canada. I'm going to reduce taxes. I'm going to reduce regulation, so deregulation. And I'm going to drill, baby, drill, as he said to Bobby Kennedy. You can deal with health, but let me deal with fossil fuels. Now, I can see you shaking your head there, Antjuan, but it sounds kind of like a recipe for success from where we're sitting here in the London. I wish somebody would come in and have similar policies here.
Well, it sounds good until you actually have to do it. And while the American people and the American news media pressed our Democratic candidate for specific answers on how you're going to do that, Donald Trump did not have the same. He had a different set of grace. And no, drill, baby, drill is not a policy. Deport millions of people is not a policy. And the reality is, when you have to do that, the consequences will come. We've already seen companies saying that the end result of tariffs is going to be a push down burden on everyday Americans. When you talk about deporting millions of people in this country. What does that mean for fruit and vegetables? What does that mean for the service industry and the industries that will be impacted by people doing those jobs? What does that mean for our military, our law enforcement? And so all those things sound good in theory, but when it comes to the actual implementation, it's a different ball game. And I would just say the one thing about the American election and elections around the world, there was a sense of rejection. There was a sense of it's easier to be angry than it is informed. And we've seen that across the country. We just have to see what this means in 4 to 8 years, not necessarily 2 years.
Noelle, that immigration issue then, you need these people. You need people to do the low-paid jobs, to do the fruit picking and the harvesting and all that a lot of Americans wouldn't necessarily do. It's exactly the same conversation that we have here in the UK. Is Donald Trump going to harm the American economy by kicking out people that will do those jobs?
We are kicking out the people that are over here illegally. Republicans are for legal immigration. Let me make that clear. We are not, only for, the people that are already here. We like people doing these jobs. We are fans of that. So many people know people that are doing, these types of job, and they want, they want that to continue, but we want legal immigration.
Okay. Antjuan, that seems fair enough, does it?
Well, I don't think the Democrats did not want legal immigration. In fact, it was the Democrats who worked with Republicans to try to come up with a comprehensive bipartisan legislation proposal that would do things that most reasonable, even the most extreme Republicans would agree to. The former president killed the legislation because he wanted to make immigration a top of mind issue. He won the election. We must pivot. We must move on. I give them that. But now you have to govern. And so all these things that were discussed, not policies, because they were not policies, all these concepts that were discussed, now they have to be implemented, and the American people are going to have a sense of expectation of what that looks like. The border crisis did not start because of Kamala Harris and because of Donald Trump. It's going to be something that we will continue to deal with, because that is what the American experiment is all about. The diversity of this country and the beautiful elements that come along with that, including a growing population that comes from different walks of life and different backgrounds and experiences and countries.
Noelle, one of the things that hit the headlines here, one of the things that Donald Trump said in the run-up to the election was this idea of tariffs. It's radical for America to talk about just smacking 10, 15, 20% tariffs on goods coming into the country in order to protect American interests. There are some people who say, well, that's just going to lead to higher prices for the American people. It's going to lead to inflation, which is already a problem. You're going to have to then put interest rates up and so on and so on and so on. Do you think that the Trump team have thought that through from an economic point of view, what that might mean? It's certainly a very good bargaining chip in terms of making other countries do what you want them to do.
Well, it is a bargaining chip, and it's already seeming to work. What you've seen right now is you've seen Mexico take action. You've also seen physically Prime Minister Trudeau flying into Mar-a-Lago to already start talks. This is telling you that they are ready to come to the table, because they do not want this. The ramification on tariffs is severe, and everybody knows that. I mean, there's been many companies, Walmart including, that has come out and said, this would be bad for us, and we're going to pass the prices down to the consumer. So everybody knows that there'd be a high price to pay. That is why we have a negotiating tool. That is why this is political posturing, but it's working. It's working. He is already meeting with these leaders.
And just explain to us then, particularly for any British viewers who might not understand why having Mexico involved in negotiations around tariffs and therefore being largely kind of at the behest of Trump and what he wants, why is that important for America at the moment?
It's very important because we've got a major problem on our hands with illegal immigration, with people coming through the border. This is the root of it all. In Mexico, it's Mexico's problem that is now our problem because of the weak borders. So you've got to do something extremely severe and threaten something extremely severe to get them to take action.
And Antjuan, Noelle's right, isn't she, in that Trudeau hot-footed it straight to Donald Trump to sit down with him straight away at the threat of tariffs and go, okay, what do you need from me? What do you want from me? Just don't impose tariffs on it. It's a genius negotiation technique. And in terms of Donald Trump being a businessman and transactional, it's pretty ballsy.
Well, we don't know, and we don't know the impact. We certainly don't know the extent of their conversation. What we do know is negotiating is part of the job of being the American president. And Donald Trump has made a promise to a certain constituency in this country about these things that he wants to do. Now he just has to deliver for them, or the American people will hold him and his party accountable in 2 years. I suspect that while these leaders may be meeting with him, doesn't mean that they're going to buckle to him. Again, tariffs, most people know that that means tax. We don't know how that burden will shift down to everyday Americans. And certainly with Trump comes two things. When it's going good, shift blame to those who came before him. We'll see what that looks like in this iteration of his tenure as president.
One of the things as well that's really struck me watching from across the Atlantic is how Trump has surrounded himself, Noelle, with a trusted team this time. It's almost like, I can see Antjuan shaking his head, but it's almost like he's had so little faith in the people around him, especially with the lawfare, as you might call it, that he's been subjected to, that he's now got people around him that he sees are very much Team Trump and that they aren't going to betray him in some way. Is that wise?
It is for Donald Trump, and it is for the people that elected him, because they wanted his policies. They wanted the tactics. They want lower taxes. They want less regulations. They want these things. So they believe in the Trump policies. So what better people, to make sure that these policies go forward than people that are like-minded and people that he trusts will get the job done.
Antjuan,
your response to that, because I could see you shaking your head.
Well, first of all, most people, respectfully to my friend Noel, most people who may have voted for Trump cannot articulate a policy he may have proposed, because it wasn't much policy. It was more language that makes sense from a polling perspective. Secondly, most of the nominees that the president-elect has put forth to be in cabinet roles are truly unserious. If Republicans say that government should be ran like a business, most of these people would not even get a call back for an interview for some of these jobs.
Give me an example.
Is a prime example. I think the D&I pick, another example. And that's why some of these folks will not get confirmed, because they're very unserious, not qualified to do the job, and have their own baggage. I can just tell you, when President Biden, even if President Obama put forth certain nominees for certain roles, like Lloyd Austin, a very qualified person to be in charge of our Department of Defense, they held his nomination up. And you look at some of the nominees we see now, they're unserious. And so I just think these people have pledged their allegiance to Donald Trump, not necessarily doing the job for the American people. That's good for Trump, but perhaps dangerous for the American people, because again, if they're confirmed, they actually have to do this job. And most people would agree they cannot do this job, nor are they qualified to do these jobs.
Noelle, do you agree with that in terms of the team around him? Are they qualified?
I think that he has some great people. And I also want to point out that he is developing this new avenue called Doge. The department, it's the one where Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are going to actually go through and see what's important and see what is absolutely draining our economy, as far as looking at different regulations and things that are frivolous. I think it is extremely smart, and I think that the American people wanted that change. Look, the American voter had a choice. They had experienced what it was like under Joe Biden, so they know what it was going to be like for Kamala Harris, and they also lived underneath Trump and all his policies. They voted what they wanted, so they these picks. They like this cabinet. They like everything about it. So you had a choice You lived under the Trump administration and you remember what that was like for 4 years. And you lived under Joe Biden and you knew what that was like for 4 years. So the American voter made a choice because they obviously know what they're getting and they liked it.
Antjuan, life under Donald Trump was pretty good last time, wasn't it? Did you what I mean, the economy I think did well and employment came down. Remarkably, you had no wars. That was what we were concerned about in London. We were watching thinking, this guy's unpredictable. He's going to have his finger just like hovering over the red button. We're literally like all looking, where can we buy a bunker, when we knew that Donald Trump was going to be elected. And then, guess what? He turned out to be one of the great peace negotiators of modern history. And we all genuinely, there's a sense here in the UK now, I think, well, not everybody, but quite a few of us not even in the media, no, most of the media don't feel like I do, but there's a sense in which when Donald Trump was elected, I woke up that morning and thought, thank God we've just averted World War III, because Russia and Ukraine obviously is pretty close to us here, and we just thought, oh, thank goodness, that's it, we're now safe. You don't feel the same way?
I do not, and it depends on how you define good. Most people would say that he mismanaged and mishandled a once in a century global pandemic where a lot of people, including a number of people in my family, died. Black Americans died at a higher clip than any other group in this country during the pandemic. And Donald Trump said we should drink bleach and that would take all of our problems away. And if you were to take a serious look at some of the policies he did implement, like the Trump tax cut, it benefited the top 1% in our country. That's not Antjuan, that's bipartisan economists who said that. So it depends on how you define good. If you look at some of the language that he used, having the bully pulpit of the Oval Office, our children and grandchildren, most people would not agree that that's language that leaders should be using. And then if you look at what happened on January 6th, so it depends on how you define good. Noelle's right. The American people spoke. We have to live with the consequences of elections in this country. So we will see what the next 4 years will look like. And we all have to just agree that the American people spoke and we will suffer or benefit from the consequences of this election.
Do you want to see him succeed, Antjuan?
I want our country to succeed. Absolutely. I do want our country to succeed, but I want the American people to hold their leaders accountable along the way. I just hope for the people who voted the most, for them to understand that they will be impacted the most by this election, particularly working class white Americans in those 7 battleground states.
Noelle, why do you think those people that Antjuan just identified won't be impacted in the way that he is concerned about?
I think that people automatically think that they're going to be safer. I think they think they're going to be more economically sound, and I feel like they think America is open for business. And with our foreign adversaries, Joe Biden's message to foreign adversaries was this: don't, just don't. Nobody really knew what that meant. It was very vague. With Trump, you don't know what he's going to do, and that's the beauty of it. I think that's why, leaders in Russia, leaders in China, they don't know. You already have, Justin Trudeau with the Prime Minister of Canada with the tariff situation, flying into Mar-a-Lago, because he doesn't know what Trump's going to do. And I think that unpredictability is a strong suit for America, because it goes back to the old saying, "Don't tread on me," because you don't know what he's going to do. And I think that makes everybody in the world feel safer.
It's kind of a damning indictment on global politics that somebody unpredictable creates stability. But there is a lot of truth to that, isn't there, Antjuan? Because if you are going to be sitting down with Kim Jong-un, let's say, and President Putin, and others, then you do need to be able to maybe talk the language of people who are similarly unpredictable.
Here's the thing about a Trump presidency that will only last 4 years. It's going to set precedent for future presidents here in the United States. When you talk about unpredictability, that also comes with a sense of danger. Because if you can't keep up, or if people try to duplicate what Trump did, I don't think it can be duplicated, it's going to set a different tone for the future. And while some people celebrate the unpredictability, they celebrate the extremism that comes along with Trump, I tend to err on the side of caution because there will be future elections, there will be future presidents, and we have to maintain our standing as top of the chart when it comes to America and this country and how we're viewed around the world. And I would just say this on the economic standpoint, keep in mind that Trump will benefit from a Biden economy and Biden policies being implemented for the first 2 years, maybe even four. And so I would be quick to not judge the first 2 years of his presidency from a macro standpoint when it comes to the economy, because a lot of that will be implementation from the Biden-Harris administration.
How much blaming do you think Donald Trump will do, Noelle, in terms of the previous administration? We have a Prime Minister here, Sir Keir Starmer, who's been in office for just over 150 days. He's had to reset his agenda today on a big statement telling us how he's going to, double down on his missions because he's pretty much achieved nothing that he intended to do. But he's still now, a few months in, 3-4 months in, still blaming the previous administration. How long can Donald Trump get away with doing that for, do you think?
I don't think his focus is going to be on the past. I think his focus is going to be on the future. And I think that is exactly what the American voters wanted. They want a better future. So I don't think that he is going to dwell in the past. He's got a lot of work to do. And I think that it would be to his detriment to focus on the past. And right now, in the circles that I run in, all I know and all I'm hearing is that it's about the future, and the future.
And on that note, let me get you both to get your crystal balls out and your psychic visions. And I want you to give me, Antjuan, I'm going to get you to give me your best case scenario for 12 months' time. Come on, root for Trump for a minute. Just indulge me here, Antjuan. What is the best case scenario for Donald Trump?
The best, he deports all these people that he promised the American voters he was going to, and somehow or another he brings down the price of eggs and food and groceries immediately for these people who overspent millions of dollars on Black Friday because their pockets were hurting so bad and that things were so bad that they voted against Kamala Harris because they could not afford eggs, but they could afford to do record shopping on Black Friday.
Yeah, it's a good dodge. I'm impressed. And Noelle, I want to know from you, what is the worst case scenario from Donald Trump? I know that's not where you want to go, but tell me, in your opinion, what's going to be failure for the Republican Party, for your party and Donald Trump?
Well, you're right on that. That's not where I wanted to go. But okay, worst case scenario would be that there is, mass chaos at the border, in getting the deportation carried out, and that prices at the store are not going down as quickly as he promised. So that would be the worst case, and to me, that would be a nightmare. But I don't think it's going to come about.
Well, look. From over here in the UK, we genuinely want to wish you guys all the luck, because there is this saying, isn't there, where America goes first, we follow. England is never far behind you. That's not always a good thing. Let me be honest. That's not always a good thing. But it's great to talk to you both this afternoon, and thank you so much for giving us your time on GBN America. That is Antjuan Seawright, the founder and CEO of Blueprint Strategy LLC, and Noelle Nikpour, Republican political strategist. And I might see you both in Washington in January.